In 2016, the world learned a Chinese spy had stolen America's most guarded fighter jet blueprints, 630,000 files meant to shortcut decades of innovation. Overnight, a rival jet emerged, indistinguishable to the eye and hyped as a threat to US military dominance. But then, a fatal flaw surfaced. No matter how perfectly you steal the recipe, you cannot fake the secret ingredient: atomic engineering refined in American foundries and guarded like gold. As Beijing's lookalike fighter began to fail, the Pentagon and its rivals had to face a stunning question. What really made the F-35 untouchable? And why did China's greatest act of cyber espionage end in smoky defeat? The breach began with a single email. In 2008, a Boeing employee received a message that looked routine but carried a hidden trap. With one careless click, the first doorway opened. From there, a team of hackers linked to the People's Liberation Army in China did not smash through firewalls. They slipped in quietly, using stolen credentials to blend in with legitimate users. Their traffic was routed through servers in third countries, masking the true source. Inside, the hackers moved methodically. They did not download everything at once. Instead, they generated directory listings, digital maps of every folder and file on the network. These lists were sent to Su Bin, the operation's mastermind, who sat thousands of miles away in Canada. Su combed through them, selecting only the highest value targets, blueprints, test plans, and flight control logic. He sent back precise instructions, and the hackers pulled files in batches, encrypting each transfer to avoid detection. Some of the most sensitive data, like C-17 and F-35 files, were stored on isolated networks protected by verification codes. The team used social engineering, posing as authorized users, tricking staff into giving up access or exploiting overlooked credentials. Each successful breach was reported back to Su, who translated the technical English into Chinese and forwarded it to military contacts. Over 6 years, they exfiltrated 65 gigabytes, 630,000 files, without setting off alarms. The operation's patience and precision made it invisible, allowing China to leapfrog years of research overnight. The first hints of the breach surfaced in late 2013, and inside the Pentagon, the mood turned cold. Analysts pored over timelines, matching the pace of Chinese fighter development with the calendar of stolen files. Suddenly, decades of American air power dominance seemed compromised. Briefings ran past midnight, with defense planners staring at wall-sized charts. The numbers did not lie. China's J-20 and the new unknown twin-tail prototype were accelerating far faster than any previous adversary program. The classified Midnight Sun session, hastily convened in a secure conference room, warned that the traditional buffer of American technological lead was evaporating. Force projection studies predicted that by the end of the decade, China could field jets with shapes and systems that mirrored the F-35, years ahead of any previous estimate. Every branch scrambled to reassess budgets and readiness. If the blueprints were truly gone, what else had slipped through the net? Reports circulated among senior brass, each more urgent than the last. Engineers and intelligence officers found themselves in the same meetings, debating how much of the F-35's edge was now exposed. The sense of vulnerability was new and deeply unsettling. For the first time in a generation, US air superiority was not a given. The question was not just whether China could build a stealth jet, it was how soon one would appear and what it would mean for every American pilot in the sky. On the tarmac at Zhuhai, the J-31 Gerfalcon made its debut, drawing instant comparisons to the F-35 Lightning II, appearing nearly identical. Aerodynamic engineers pored over every detail, measuring angles and tracing lines from photographs and airshow footage. The most striking parallel sat right at the nose. Both jets feature a diverterless supersonic inlet, known as DSY, a smooth bulging ramp that guides air into the engine while scattering radar waves. For the F-35, this DSI design was the result of years of wind tunnel testing and computational fluid dynamics. On the J-31, the curvature, the Zeitgleichheit, even the placement of the inlet bump match within a few percentage points. Side-by-side overlays show the geometry is nearly indistinguishable. The similarities do not end there. Both aircraft sport canted twin tails raked outward at angles of about 17 degrees. Analysts used photogrammetry to estimate the J-31 tail cant at 1 to 2 degrees off the F-35, well within engineering tolerances for a direct copy. The fuselage cross-sections, the sharp leading edges, the alignment of control surfaces all line up with uncanny precision. Even the internal weapons bays share the same trapezoidal doors and blended wing-body integration. On paper, the J-31 looks like it could be an F-35 twin. The numbers are close. Length, wingspan, and height all fall within a 10% margin. The airframe is a near mirror, right down to the edge, aligned panel seams designed to scatter radar. But as every aerospace engineer knows, matching the shell is only the first step. The real test lies beneath the surface, where the heart of the jet waits to be revealed. News anchors fanned the flames with bold headlines like China unveils F-35 clone, Pentagon's air superiority in jeopardy, and most ominous of all, carrier killer, J-31 threatens US Navy. Defense columnists filled pages with speculation. Could the world's most expensive weapons program be outflanked by a bargain basement rival? TV pundits debated the numbers, pointing out that the J-31 silhouette matched the F-35 almost line for line. They warned of a future where American carriers, once untouchable, would face swarms of these new jets, cheaper, faster to build, and ready to tip the balance in the Pacific. The phrase "carrier killer" sent shivers through strategic planners. Budget hawks seized the moment, demanding answers. Why spend hundreds of billions if another country could copy the results for a fraction of the cost? Editorials questioned whether the US industrial base had lost its edge. Some even predicted a coming wave of J-31 exports, flooding the skies of America's allies and rivals alike. The term "carrier killer" stuck, repeated in op-eds and defense briefings. Overnight, the Gefalcon became a symbol of fear, proof to some that the era of US naval dominance was slipping away. The crescendo reached Congress, where lawmakers grilled Pentagon officials on live TV. Was the F-35 now obsolete? Had China leapfrogged decades of American research? Beneath the panic, one question echoed: if they could copy the shape, what else had they mastered? The answer, as engineers would soon argue, lay not in the lines of the jet, but in the unseen science that powered it. Inside a jet engine, the laws of physics are ruthless. The heart of the F-35, the Pratt & Whitney F-135, faces a challenge that would destroy ordinary metals in seconds. Combustion gases swirl past the first stage turbine blades at 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. That is hotter than molten lava, far beyond what common alloys can survive. At this heat, steel would soften and sag. Aluminum would vanish in a flash. Even most advanced nickel alloys begin to creep, crack, or melt. Yet the engine must not only endure this inferno, it must do so hour after hour, year after year, without a single blade giving way. The margin for error is measured in microns. A microscopic flaw, a single grain boundary inside the metal, can start a crack that rips the engine apart at 30,000 RPM. This is not a problem you can solve with a bigger fan or a thicker blade. It is a challenge that demands materials born in a laboratory shaped by decades of metallurgical trial and error. The F-35's secret is not just in its shape or its software. It is in the atomic structure of the metal that stands between controlled flight and catastrophic failure. Inside a jet engine foundry, the work is measured in microns and minutes, but the real magic takes years to master. At the heart of the F-35's power is a process called directional solidification, a method that turns molten metal into a single flawless crystal. Engineers pour a nickel superalloy into a ceramic mold, then slowly lower it through a vacuum furnace. The temperature drops with surgical precision, coaxing atoms to align from the bottom up. Instead of thousands of tiny grains, the result is one continuous lattice, free of boundaries where cracks could start. This is the Bridgman casting method, and every step is a test of patience and skill. Once the crystal is grown, the blade is far from finished. It enters a hot isostatic press, where it is squeezed under intense heat and pressure to crush any hidden voids. Next, lasers drill thousands of microscopic cooling holes, each no wider than a human hair. These channels let air flow through the blade, forming a protective film that keeps the metal from melting at 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. The final product is a work of precision that no blueprint can capture. It is not just a part, it is the result of decades of foundry expertise, tight process control, and the steady hands of engineers who know that a single misstep can spell disaster at 30,000 revolutions per minute. No PDF can teach the feel of a furnace or the timing of a pour. That knowledge lives in the people and in the foundry itself. A jet engine's true worth is measured not just in raw power, but in how long it can deliver that power without breaking down. The F-35's turbine blades, grown as single crystals and drilled with microscopic cooling channels, are built to last thousands of hours in the furnace of combat. Maintenance crews on US carriers and air bases do not scramble to swap engines after every mission. Instead, they log sortie after sortie, knowing each blade can survive years of punishing heat and stress. The F-135's official service benchmark stands at around 2,000 hours before major overhaul, a number that logistics officers quietly celebrate. That means more time in the air, fewer jets grounded, and a fleet that's always ready when the call comes. The math is simple. When your engine lasts 40 times longer than the competition, you own the skies. Every hour saved on the ground is another hour of air superiority. This is the dividend of mastering metallurgy, not just a technical edge, but a force multiplier that keeps pilots flying while rivals are stuck in the shop waiting for replacement parts. Procurement officers in China faced a hard reality when it came time to pick an engine for their new stealth fighter. The blueprints in hand offered the shape, but not the heart. Without access to American single-crystal turbine technology, there was no domestic engine that could withstand the heat and stress demanded by a fifth-generation jet. The solution was to look abroad. The J-31's first flights relied on engines whose lineage traced directly back to the Soviet MiG-29, the RD-93, a Russian design, and its Chinese variant, the WS-13. These power plants were built for older airframes, not for the punishing requirements of a modern stealth platform. They used conventional casting methods and legacy metallurgy, unable to match the temperature tolerance or efficiency of the Pratt & Whitney F-135. For Chinese acquisition teams, the choice was less about ambition and more about necessity. The only engines available in quantity were those designed in the Cold War era, optimized for reliability in rugged conditions, not for the invisible war of radar and heat signatures. Each decision to install a foreign-derived engine was a compromise, trading the promise of stealth and endurance for the reality of what could actually be built and flown. The result was a fighter that looked the part, but carried a power plant rooted in a different era, one whose limitations would soon become obvious to the world. Spectators at the Zhuhai Air Show did not need a degree in aerospace engineering to spot the problem. As the J-31 Falcon roared down the runway, a thick black plume trailed behind it, sooty, unmistakable, and impossible to ignore. For a jet that was supposed to vanish from radar, it might as well have been waving a flag. Sensor analysts watching from across the world did not just see smoke, they saw a tactical disaster. Soot particles in the exhaust scatter radar waves, turning a stealth profile into a spotlight. Infrared sensors picked up an even bigger giveaway. The engine's heat blooms spiked far above what any fifth-generation fighter should emit. On the screens of missile operators, the J-31 glowed like a bonfire against a dark sky. Every wisp of smoke, every surge of heat gave away its position to anyone watching. In a world where survival depends on staying hidden, the J-31's engine transformed it from a ghost into a target. No matter how perfect the airframe looked, the dirty signature in the sky was a message to every adversary. This jet can be seen, tracked, and locked from miles away. Maintenance crews at Chinese airbases faced a relentless grind. Every 50 hours, the J-31's engines needed to come out for a full overhaul. That's not a typo. By comparison, the F-35's American-made heart keeps running for 2,000 hours before it needs the same level of attention. The numbers aren't just different, they define who controls the skies. Each time a J-31 engine reached its limit, ground crews scrambled, jets were grounded, and spare parts became a logistical nightmare. A squadron that should have been ready for combat spent more time in the hangar than in the air. Pilots couldn't count on sustained missions. The RD-93 and WS-13 engines simply weren't built for the heat or the stress. Supercruise, flying supersonic without afterburners, was out of reach. On paper, the J-31 promised reach and speed. In practice, its range shrank and its sorties dropped. American jets flew circles around their rivals while Chinese mechanics reached for their wrenches. The difference between a 1,000-hour engine and a 50-hour one isn't just a technical detail, it's the line between dominance and disappointment. Today, even as blueprints leak and rivals chase American designs, the true edge remains locked inside the foundries, where single-crystal superalloys are forged, not copied. As global competition intensifies, mastery of invisible sciences, not just visible shapes, defines power. In the race for dominance, shortcuts reveal their cost. You can steal secrets, but you cannot counterfeit genius. Thanks for watching. Drop your thoughts in the comments below.